This show doesn't run on ads or subscriptions. It runs on you tapping that follow button. If you're enjoying Bold and Boutique, the best way to support it and keep it free is to hit follow on Spotify. That's what keeps this going. That's what keeps it independent. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the episode.
So to kick things off, characters and personas have gained a more prominent and active role in branding and customer engagement, as I mentioned before. But why exactly?
Well, traditional brands have mainly relied on static visuals like logos, taglines, and carefully crafted slogans to communicate their identity. And some brands still do, by the way. And of course, they would run campaigns in which they resonated with their identity ideas and messages in other ways. But compared to today's online world, it used to be much slower. So now with the rise of digital media, for example, and interactive technologies, brands need more dynamic assets and representations. For example, personification, embodiment, and personalization have become more important to make it easier for consumers to identify with brands, which leads to more engagement.
And can you paint a picture of what an AI persona actually is?
An AI character or persona is essentially the character an AI adopts during interactions. It's a curated set of guidelines on tone, style, looks, sound, and behavior that shapes how the AI solution or how the AI-driven solution is presented, responds to questions, tells stories, offers help, etc., etc.
Okay, so it's just like the personality or the character of a human.
Well, it's similar, but a human has true personality and real emotions, whereas the AI persona is designed to simulate a specific, consistent voice and manner of engagement that aligns with its intended purpose. So, for example, traits like professionalism, friendliness, or even a hint of humor are all intended to make interactions more relatable and contextually appropriate.
And that's the main goal when designing an AI character.
It's definitely an important part, but staying on brand is as crucial as ensuring coherence and engagement. So essentially, the main goal of an AI persona is to help ensure that the interaction not only feels coherent and engaging, but also simulates a conversation with a knowledgeable and reliable human while consistently reflecting the brand.
And could you elaborate a bit more on why it should simulate a conversation with a human? I mean, not every experience needs to feel human, right? Sometimes AI characters are not designed to be human-like. Their design is intended to signal that someone is interacting with an AI and not a person.
Yeah, so you raise an excellent point there. So in my experience, whether the AI character is human-like or non-human-like, it's beneficial to leverage anthropomorphism. So even when designing a non-human persona, incorporating relatable human traits can make interactions feel more intuitive and engaging. Because even if you don't leverage anthropomorphism, users will have a natural tendency to assign human qualities to non-human entities anyway.
Okay, let's explore the idea of giving, for example, chatbots or voice user interfaces human qualities. What would you do first? I mean, do we delve into the world of archetypes, for example?
You could do that. but it's not necessarily the first thing you do. So archetypes provide a clear framework for defining a personality. It's a technique to tap into universal stories and emotions. You can build a relatively simple but strong emotional connection with consumers by aligning a character and its personality with a familiar archetype, like the hero, the sage, or like the explorer, for example.
What do you mean by simple? Is that a good thing?
It can be, but relying too heavily on, for example, a single archetype may be oversimplifying a character, potentially neglecting the complexity and nuance of a unique and compelling and realistic identity.
I see. It may become a little bit generic, mediocre.
Yeah, so the character might feel even a bit cliché in my experience. So this leads to perceptions of inauthenticity and boredom in some cases. So some customers may expect more, especially from major prestigious brands.
Right, I understand.
And on top of this, since many brands may adopt similar archetypes, there's a risk of blending in rather than standing out if the archetype isn't executed with like a unique twist. So it becomes harder to differentiate and cut through that noise, if you know what I mean. On the other hand, there are strategic scenarios where a functional, familiar character is exactly what's needed. So, a character that's easy for consumers to recognize and understand can be a powerful storytelling tool, fostering immediate connection and trust. So, in such cases, rather than striving to stand out with an overly unique personality, blending in and aligning with common expectations can actually work to the brand's advantage. The key is to finding that right balance between distinctiveness and relatability. Before we move on, first this. AI can answer your questions, solve your problems, even predict what you will need next. But how does it make you feel? At Voice Branding, we design the emotional layer of AI-driven solutions. The visuals, the voice, the tone, the timing, all the little things that make a conversation feel natural and intentional. It's not always just about functionality. The AI-driven experiences that you build represent your brand, and you should think about that for a second. If you're implementing and deploying AI-driven solutions, email me at phoebe@voicebranding.ai. That's PHOEBE at voicebranding.ai. And let's talk about designing the experience, not just the technology. All right, let's pick up where we left off.
So, if archetypes are not the first framework you would leverage, what is the first thing you do?
Well, in the previous episode, I explained that our journey often starts with studying the brand and the company to gain a thorough understanding of the brand values, target audience, use cases, etc., etc. After this phase, I like to leverage inspiring concept artists.
What do you mean by concept artists?
So, when I talk about concept artists, I'm talking about designers who love a blank piece of paper. So the objective is to create variations, many variations of a character and its persona with little to no guidance. They are briefed exclusively on the foundational research findings derived from analyzing the company's brand. So they have a lot of freedom to conceptualize their characters and personalities.
So these people need to be very creative and come up with a lot of ideas.
Yeah, but don't underestimate the amount of research that goes into conceptualizing such characters. So the research is what inspires the concept artists. So they need to go deep and learn anything that makes the character feel real and authentic.
All right. And what sort of things are they researching?
So there are two distinct phases of research. The first one is exploratory, aimed at gathering inspiration from a variety of sources, whether it's online, through movies, books, museum visits, you name it. And this creative exploration generates ideas for the character. And once a concept is established, the second phase begins. And this is like a detailed investigation into the character's appearance, its voice, its style, its tone, ethnic influences, cultural references, you name it.
Okay, so much more than just doodling.
Yes, much more. But this part of the process is very, very important.
I see. And what makes a good concept artist?
In my experience, the best concept artists are people who are extremely creative and are fascinated by stories. And these people have like this distinctive style and ways of thinking that lead to interesting ideas and creative output. Not always useful output, but I guess you have to take that for granted. I think the most important thing is to make sure to have the right people on the job. So sometimes creative people with a distinctive style can't always adjust and work on something that doesn't resonate with them and inspire them.
So you mentioned not everything they produce is useful. What does this mean exactly?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Concept artists are among the first people to be called in for major projects. They produce many designs and conceptualize various characters and personalities, but the work is exploratory. So unfortunately, many of those ideas will not be used. It's just like part of that process.
And who decides whether an idea is worth pursuing?
I do, of course. No, no, I'm kidding. But we discuss the ideas with the client and often conduct user interviews to learn from their input and feedback as well. So we test various designs and learn how they come across to the customers and whether they meet their expectations and needs as well. So these results are guidance for our character polishers. So I'd say the client and the customer decide whether an idea is worth pursuing. And in some cases, there is also room for the design team to push certain ideas, even if they don't seem to resonate directly with the customer or stakeholders, for example.
Why would you do that?
Including designs that initially didn't resonate can actually be quite useful in further research and testing. So, for example, you can learn from what doesn't work and better identify weaknesses, which is also important for understanding user preferences. So, in other words, analyzing designs that fail to resonate helps to pinpoint which elements or features are problematic, also offering insights into what to avoid, for example. So besides that, it's also a way to explore diverse perspectives. And by exploring a rich range of designs, you ensure that decisions aren't made on an incomplete picture. So it's quite a comprehensive approach, but it will help you to gain insights and prioritize potential improvements.
Okay, circling back to your previous answer. You mentioned that the results of these initial interviews and the client feedback are guidance for character polishers. What are character polishers and how do you leverage them when you're crafting an AI persona?
So, character polishers are designers who build on initial concepts provided by concept artists or redefine existing characters. So they excel at working in various styles and have the ability to replicate other styles while still being able to make a character and persona their own, something unique. And these designers enhance original ideas by adding detail, strategy, consistency. They optimize designs based on feedback and make informed decisions to refine a character's personality, looks, tone of voice, etc., etc. So really ensuring it resonates with stakeholders and customers.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, the process of designing an AI character starts with the foundational research into the company's brand. And doing this, the goal is to understand the brand, its target audience, values, messaging, the use case, etc., etc.
Yes.
And then next, the concept artists are invited to generate a variety of ideas based on minimal guidance and the foundational research results. And then the designs are being tested and feedback is being collected. And based on this feedback, a few promising, interesting concepts are chosen. And finally, the character polishers step in to refine these selected designs further.
Yeah, that's a good summary up until this point. We're not done at this point, but we are definitely on the right track.
No, I get that. But before we continue, let's zoom in on the work of concept artists a bit more. How do they approach designing initial concepts for an AI character or persona?
I think the approach of each concept artist is different. And of course, each project is different. But in my experience, we often find ourselves going through similar steps.
All right. Tell me about the general steps.
Sure. So imagine you are a concept artist in my team, and I've hired you to work on an AI assistant for a major aviation brand.
Okay, I'm in my role.
Good. So I have introduced myself and have pitched the general foundation brand research results and the goal of the project. In such a pitch or briefing, whatever you want to call it, I simply tell you about the brand, the use case, target audience, etc., etc. I might use different reference materials and relevant statistics to offer you valuable insights into the project. You get the idea, right?
Yes, so far so good.
Okay, so your first step is to go back to your desk and read the foundational research results in detail. And as soon as you finish, you're on the job. Your job is to create various concepts for an on-brand AI character and persona. How do you start?
Probably, like you said, I would go and look for inspiration.
Right, so your first task is to sit and think, which sounds easy, but not everyone is able to do that these days without any distractions. But that's a different topic. Anyway, you sit down, you think about the reason why this character needs to exist. You start thinking about on-brand personality traits that could fit the character. You ideate and put your ideas on paper. And of course, it's not that simple. Ideas often don't come out of thin air. But you take your time and you go to the movies, look at magazines, spend time on social media, wherever you get your inspiration from. And once you start working on a project, you will find a wealth of inspiration anywhere you go. Even just like walking around the city, you'll be inspired by all kinds of people and perhaps their clothing and how they talk to each other. You'll be inspired in no time to make like various fresh and original characters.
I can imagine, but what do I do when I have found my inspiration? Do I just draw a character on a piece of paper or do I describe a persona? I mean, what is my delivery back to you?
This can be anything: a drawing, a 3D model, a comprehensive description, and generated images, etc., etc. Your goal is to explain and translate the core essence of your ideas.
And how many characters do I present?
I prefer multiple distinct concepts to gain a solid foundation for further research and design refinement. It's important to note that a single concept can include multiple characters. So for example, for the aviation client, you might propose a family of like 4 characters and explain why this group dynamic is particularly effective. And additionally, it's essential to elaborate on the character hierarchy. So this means establishing different levels of detail, the simplicity, or for example, extravagance for each character based on their role and function in engaging specific customer segments of the target audience. Before we dive back in, a quick word from our partner. This is our easy video podcast setup. In the studio I'm in, they use two SL60 lights with large softboxes to give everyone a soft, flattering light on one side of their face. Then they fine-tune the look with two small accent lights just to dial in that perfect glow. Furthermore, all you need is a quality lens and a camera with 4K HDMI output for high-end recording and live streaming. For mics, they use the go-to SM7Bs or the Sennheiser MKH416s. That's the magic behind podcastproducties.nl, and they are now available for production in Amsterdam. Now let's get back to the show.
Okay, so let's elaborate on this example of the family of characters for the aviation company. Let's say I'm pitching this to you and I give you a description of each character, what they look like, what they sound like, what their purpose is in the user experience, what their relationship is to the brand and to each other, and which customer segments they are designed for to engage with. Would this be a good example of a concept character design you can work with?
Yeah, that sounds good. But remember, the goal is to explore multiple ideas in this stage. So make sure to include other ideas as well. Often people create a design, fall in love with it, and unconsciously decide they're done. Really fight that urge. Put the extra effort to see if you can come up with something completely different that is maybe even stronger.
Yeah, I can see how this might be a pitfall. What other additional challenges have you encountered when working with concept artists during the initial design phase of a project?
Another pitfall is over-refining concepts. So spending too much time perfecting one idea. It's acceptable for some elements to shine while others remain just okay. That's totally fine. So some concept artists tend to continuously work and optimize even the good parts rather than moving on to explore new ideas. And often during the exploratory phase, it's more beneficial to generate fresh new concepts rather than to extensively or excessively tweak a single design.
Yeah, I understand. Tweaking and optimizing is more like the work for a character polisher, right?
It is, yes. And they don't solely optimize based on their own insights and beliefs. They also have to take into account the feedback of stakeholders and the customer feedback to fuel their work and substantiate design decisions. And besides that, they are conscious of the fact that you can push a design too far to the point that it breaks or no longer works for the needs of the project. So it's less likely that they go too far, in my opinion.
I have another question. How do you balance commercial design with artistic design? I mean, what happens if, for example, the customers initially reject a design, but the stakeholders and designers really love this design?
Balancing commercial design with artistic design is always a delicate act. On one hand, you have the creative vision, the design that stakeholders and probably the designers in your team feel deeply passionate about. On the other hand, you have the customer. If they don't like it, what's the point, right? At the end of the day, you want users to like their experience with your products and services.
My initial thought would be that the opinions of the customers are more important.
I get the thought, and often the answer is yes, what the customer thinks is most important. Having said this, if the artistic vision is pushed, it may not win over everyone immediately, but that doesn't mean it lacks value. So customers might initially push back on something unconventional. Designs that feel real and innovative often face initial resistance simply because they challenge established expectations. But over time, as the customer becomes familiar with it, that authenticity and uniqueness can lead to a lasting impact and even maybe a bigger commercial success.
So you say it's possible for customer opinions to evolve over time, potentially leading them to appreciate and respect a character design that was first perceived as, I don't know, negatively because of their existing expectations?
In my experience, that's possible for sure. But it's a risk as well. So there's no guarantee that the target audience will adjust their expectations and start to appreciate your unique but unconventional design choices. Unique and unconventional ideas sometimes take time to find their audience. But when they do, they can become a great success, but perhaps they only resonate with a specific group of people. And what if these people are not the customers you want to focus on?
And why would you not want to focus on the group of people who loves your design?
Focusing solely on the group that loves your design can be risky in a commercial context. So, for example, if you're designing for a luxury car brand, your goal is to appeal to potential buyers, people who can afford those cars. Even if a passionate group appreciates your work, if they don't match the target market, you might not be achieving the commercial objectives. So aligning your designs with the client's audience is essential for maximizing its effectiveness and commercial impact.
Okay, clear. Speaking of keeping the objectives of the client in mind, if you design an AI character or persona, you probably also need to think about the technical possibilities and perhaps more importantly, the restrictions of AI-driven solutions.
Absolutely. While you don't have to be a technical expert, having a basic understanding of the underlying technology is important. In many of my projects, interactivity is key, which is why designing an AI persona often means incorporating, for example, advanced text-to-speech capabilities, because you want to create conversations that feel natural and engaging. Without at least a fundamental grasp of technologies like text-to-speech, for example, you may encounter significant challenges during the design process into like a frustrating hassle. So I think this technical awareness not only guides your creative decision, but also ensures that your design is realistic within the constraints of the AI-driven solution.
Okay, so these considerations should be taken into account when designing an AI persona.
Yes, but not from the start. In the beginning, ideation and exploration is important. Later in the process, it's important to scope down the focus by considering technical requirements. I get that you want the character or persona to communicate in a consistent, natural, and genuine manner, avoiding overly scripted or robotic responses. But your ideas must also be realistic, otherwise you'll run into issues in the development process, for example. And don't get me wrong, by the way, there is so much possible these days if you aim to make interactions feel more natural and less scripted. Text-to-speech models, for example, and speech synthesis technology is very advanced and can provide an AI character and persona really a unique and engaging voice that aligns with the brand identity, or multiple voices even. And voices can really like signal multiple emotions these days and speak in distinctive speaking styles that are completely designed from scratch. If you want to design a virtual influencer or AI character, you don't need to be technical. It starts with the right framework, strategy, and ideas. Whether you are a product manager, marketing strategist, or content specialist, and you'd like to learn more about virtual influencers, brand ambassadors, and AI characters in general, try our workshop for inspiration, or go deeper with a one-day training program or a 5-day design bootcamp. Visit boldandboutique.com for more information. That's all for now. My name is Phoebe and thanks for listening.